Hi, I'm Dr. Muzammal. Thank you for tuning in. Now, if we're noticing in our life an emotional experience that is difficult or a behavioral pattern that is unhelpful, in both instances, typically, it will require, or it's very helpful for us to feel and face some difficult emotion that we haven't yet felt and faced. Let me take it one example at a time. So a couple of examples I'll go through with the emotional experiences first. Let's say we're experiencing a prevalent emotion that's common, that's there quite often in our life. It could be sadness, it could be anxiety that is dominating our life, or it could be some other emotion. Typically, we are to a degree feeling that emotion. We're feeling and noticing the anxiety coming up, and it's unpleasant. Or we're feeling the sadness or whatever it is, and it's, it has a degree of strength and it's unpleasant. And there's also, however, often a degree of resistance. If that anxiety, for instance, coming up isn't pleasant, so there's often some pushing away, there's some resistance to that emotion. And so we're in kind of two worlds. We're feeling something and we're not feeling it fully because we want to kind of get on with life. And what this resistance does, it keeps us in this in-between place. So if we can, instead of resisting, for instance, let's take anxiety, instead of resisting the anxiety, let go of that resistance and allow ourselves to feel the raw emotion of anxiety, feel it in the body. The body is where we feel emotions. And just let it come fully up and through. Then it can begin to find its way out and we can integrate the energy. Okay, so a prevalent emotion can be transformed through facing and feeling that emotion rather than resisting it. So that's a prevalent emotion. What if there's an emotion that is activated in our life and that comes up stronger than seems to be appropriate in a situation? So let's say a small behavior from someone else activates a very strong anger or rage in us, and this is a common pattern in our life. What could be the case is that strong emotion, that anger, for instance, could be a cover for an emotion that we are avoiding, that we haven't yet felt and faced. So it's covering up something and protecting us from feeling something that is painful to feel. It could be some loss that we've had or something else that the anger is protecting us from, or some other kind of pain. And so what is needed is for us to get under the anger so we can access the pain that is underneath, and we can begin to feel and process the pain that is in the body. And as we begin to feel and process the pain, it can begin to disperse. It can begin to come through and out of the system. And then there becomes less of a need for the anger to cover, to protect us from feeling that which we are now feeling and have started to process. So that's the example with emotions. A prevalent emotion, such as anxiety or sadness, or an emotion that is activated like anger, and that is a cover or a protection for a deeper pain. Let's look now at behavior. Let's take the example of a behavior that is like a compulsion. For instance, reaching out for a cigarette or a substance, or running to social media, or eating as a compulsive habit. Now, typically, what could be the case is that these compulsive behaviors are a way or a strategy of escaping from an emotion that we don't want to feel. So again, it's something we don't want to feel, as in the other examples. So let's say there's an emotion that is coming up and it's just a whisper. We may not even notice it, but we automatically, maybe even boredom, and we automatically then reach out for a cigarette, for whatever compulsive behavior is our strategy, is our go-to strategy. And so a way out of this is to roll back the camera and to the point just before we reached out for whatever we reached out for, food, cigarette, whatever, roll back the camera to just before that impulse and notice what we're feeling at that point. That's the emotion that we're avoiding and that we need to feel. And as we do the work of engaging with, of facing, of feeling that emotion that we're avoiding, we begin to process it. It begins to open up. Space opens up in our being, in our body, that allows other choices, other options. Okay, so that's how facing and feeling a difficult emotion in this instance can help us out of the trap of an obsessive behavioral pattern. I'll just take one final example with behaviors here, which is a behavior in a team or a group or a workplace. Such a behavior may be, for example, that we don't speak up when we're feeling something that needs to be spoken, or we tend to dominate others, or we tend to be submissive, or we tend to silence someone repeatedly who wants to speak. So these are unhelpful behavioral patterns. And what is often going on here is that there is usually a belief associated with that behavior, a belief we have about ourselves, about others, about the world. And if we can identify that belief and we can step into the idea of that belief being untrue or being devastated, being demolished, and step into what that makes us feel when that belief is completely demolished, we'll notice that there's an emotion there that we're avoiding what it feels like in the absence of this belief that we've constructed. When we can face and feel that emotion that exists because the belief we hold is not actually true, then we can begin to start the work of processing what is stored there and opening up space for other possibilities, other options. So the essence of all this is that rather than bypassing, we're actually feeling and facing. So rather than resisting or covering or escaping from, we're facing and feeling what is actually there. And in so doing, we can begin to release, we can begin to transform, and we can begin to take further steps on that journey of liberation, of that journey toward wholeness, toward integrating different parts of ourselves and becoming a more whole human being. And that's a treasure. And we can do some of this work by ourselves. We can have our individual practices that we can do. We can also benefit and might need to benefit from support outside of ourselves. There are guided processes, and if you'd like access to my emotional relief walk-in that includes a guided audio with a support structure and a newsletter, then you can see the link. I'll put the link in the description and in the comments area. Or if you'd like a call with myself to talk through where you're at and what might be a way forward, then I'll put a link to that as well in the description and in the comments area. And so I'm Dr. Muzammal, and if you enjoyed and gained from this video, then please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like. And if you'd like more explorations and insights on individual and collective liberation, then please do follow and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video.